set the stage for this show.
Thank you and welcome everybody. Is everybody with us now, Emily? Okay, so we're everywhere where everybody can hear us now. Okay, thank you. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. Today has been quite an interesting journey. For those of you who have seen this show before, you know that this is called JAWS Mental Health Awareness, where we talk about different things related to mental health issues and bring awareness to different things that everyday people like you and me, just regular people at the coffee shop or at the grocery store, in the doctor's office and so forth, go through things that many of us are not aware of, or we think that some kind of celebrity or other hero of some sort doesn't have to deal with. Well, the everyday people do. And in many cases, there's people like who I believe was it Whitney Houston or was it anyways, there was a famous singer who's African American. I loved her to death, loved her music, but she was one example of a celebrity that also suffers of mental illness, and in her case, she died of a drug overdose. It was in her sleep, but all to say that even big celebrities that we think, sometimes are these big heroes and they don't understand the you and me of the everyday world, even they go through mental illnesses and struggles, whether it's drug addiction or it's a condition like my PTSD and so forth. That said, it's not uncommon for people with various types of mental illnesses to end up on disability income because either they can't work at all or they can't work a job where they can get health insurance. So they end up having bad behavior related to their condition being out of control that's linked to not being able to get health insurance to help them have a way to get the medical help they need. And in this case, with mental illnesses, medical help can be more under the category of mental health care as opposed to medical health care. A lot of you who work with insurance know that in an insurance plan, the mental health coverage is different than the medical coverage. But a lot of employers supply their employees with some kind of insurance that covers both medical and mental health. However, I am working with Wingate TV, and I had told him a few hours ago about how I'm working with NAOMI, that's the National Association of Mental Illnesses, and a particular representative who's at state level, who's at national level, to bring a movement where we can make basically a healthcare program that's similar to the Affordable Care Act, only the Affordable Care Act only allows people to make up to somewhere around $39,000 a year in order to get insurance, medical and mental health insurance that will basically have a $5,000 to $10,000 deductible. So they can only get it if they have pre-existing insurance. I mean, if they have pre-existing conditions, if their income is less than $39,000. And so these plans cost somewhere in the thousands per month, like $1,200 or $2,000 per month to have, what leaves them, give or take, $1,000 left to live off of all the other expenses. That's a big issue that even has multiple people I know of who would like to return to the workforce who are on disability being pushed the opposite direction, which is to just stay on disability because they can't get health coverage, because so many of us are ones that want to work contract jobs, and there are certain contract jobs that we can do, but we can't do in full-time employment. Some of us can work part-time, but then again, when part-time is at our own schedule and allows more accommodations, it's generally defined as a contract, which means we have to get our own health care insurance and our own mental health care coverage under that health insurance, and also our own of all the other insurances like dental and vision and so forth. However, if we have pre-existing conditions, we can't get health insurance or medical insurance or any of the other insurances. We have no means if we can't get it through the Affordable Care Act if we make more than $39,000, unless we stay on disability and we are on Medicare and Medicaid. In some cases, people are on their parents or other family members as a dependent, but then again, that comes with being disabled and staying on disability. That does not come with being in the workforce, but having the type job that can't get insurance. So I'm working with a TV production company as well as the National Association of Mental Illnesses to bring awareness to a level that will get a movement with both the public of people joining us in this force to push that affordable health care with reasonable deductions to meet will be available for those of us who work contract and are self-employed but have pre-existing conditions. And based on this goal, this morning I found somebody who is going to work with me to make a documentary TV show where we will bring more information to you. And this TV show will be basically an interview asking different people from Naomi, of course, myself, and potentially some of my friends or these other people that want to return to the workforce but are part of the people with this particular struggle. That's why they cannot return to the workforce, all coming together to produce a documentary TV show. Or it'll be, I guess, more of the kind that you'll find on Hulu and YouTube TV and that sort of thing. But we have the goal of it being a series, and we will update it so that new episodes support history in the making. As more things are brought to the attention of Congress, or as I bring it to the attention of other people, that where I will be doing public speaking on behalf of Naomi, as being one of their public speakers, then the goal is for it to produce enough of us getting together to rally up, or to make our voice heard in some way or another, depending upon each of our ability. And this is the everyday people, not just people on disability, but other people with mental illnesses. Because even if you're not disabled, but you have a mental illness that gets in the way, that's why you can't work a full-time employment, or why you could work a full-time contract but not employment, or other reasons why you can only be self-employed in some cases. Those are all reasons that you could have mental illnesses or know someone that you'd like to be part of this to represent that are all people who, for whatever reason, maybe they can work, maybe they're great at what they do, or even excellent at what they do, but they're not able to get the health care they need. So we want to work together to make this movement so all of us can be in the workforce, which will also solve problems between people being on disability who are not disabled. And in the case that many I know, the problem is that they cannot get health insurance if they return to working, which is why they stay on disability if they were because they were disabled at one point, but they got the health care to not be anymore. But that's why they don't return to the workforce. And so this will support that goal of getting more people off disability or SSI and back in the workforce, at least those who can, that the inability to get health insurance is the reason they're not returning to the workforce. And that could potentially help reduce our taxes because we have to pay different Social Security taxes and so forth. And many of us know what you and I are paying is going to support the people that are presently on disability. And that's going to their Social Security and so forth, to where a lot of us know about this big movement about we have to make our own savings for our own retirement, because there's a thing that's been going on for decades, since the 60s, that was started by, what was his name? Helm from the 70s, who was a politician back then. He started pointing out that with all the people who are going on the system for disability, that Social Security funds are going to run out. Now, that's been delayed over decades, where he thought it'd be ran out by the 80s. In the 80s, he thought it'd be ran out by the 90s. So we don't know how accurate that is. But do we really want to find out how accurate and hit that point? Or do we want to get more people working and be able to lower taxes while having more people paying in because they're at work and they're making money, versus having non-taxable income? So this is very political, but this episode, I'm trying to make you aware of what action we're trying to take that applies to possibly yourself, or if you work in the mental health industry, it applies to your client. And then another way could apply to you as far as possibly having another insurance plan to want to seek out to be a provider through in your contract. But we need to first get together to make this happen. Anyway, so going to the point is there's all this going on, and we're going to make a documentary movie / show or series. There will potentially be a series if we have enough data and enough feedback and so forth, where it will involve various people coming together to talk about how this impacts them, in addition to decision makers being part of it to give their point of view about what can be done or what cannot be done, and reasons and so forth from different levels of authority, including you and me as everyday Americans, everyday citizens, including people who are on disability and want to speak up, because maybe there's some of those that want to return to the workforce but can't because of insurance-related reasons, the inability to get it, or so forth. So that's what I'd like to talk about today. Does anybody have anything? Any questions? Any comments, Dan? Emily, is anybody in the room? Emily?
No.
Is anybody in the...
No, I'm the only one in there right now.
Okay. All right, Kurt, let's hear what you guys say.
Well, basically, I was sharing out the show online, and I'm trying to retrace kind of where you were bringing that. I heard you talking about the NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, and so forth. I too have worked with them. Part of what they, in a general sense, have available on the national level is things on suicide ideation prevention or suicide prevention and responding to that, the QPR training, question, persuade, and refer. So I guess I just reference that to kind of bring a point about help. I shared, kind of a little parable type story before that we got from Tony Hunt, who is a partner with the Happy Neighborhood Project. But more personally, he shared this on, another show that we do. And it was about a boy who, I'll abbreviate it, was simply a boy who wanted to, deliver papers with his father. Father got distracted one day with the stack of papers in the wagon. And while the dad was gone, the boy kind of got the ambition to set out to impress his dad and to go continue on delivering the newspapers without his dad. What ended up happening is at a curb, the wagon tipped over and the papers went all over, and there was a big wind, so they were blowing around, whatever. The dad talked to him about this idea of, did you use all your strength? And it's kind of belabored about how they go back and forth. But at one point, at the end of it, the father's like, did you ask for help? And the boy said no. And the father said, you did not use all your strength. So I just bring that forward to say that, as we talk about mental health awareness, and if we're aware, of stress, anxiety, feeling of overwhelm, feeling anger, whatever it may be, or like at the Happy Neighborhood Project, our chief happiness officer, Ed DeBerry, if, he talks about the 3-minute rule. So he promotes happiness as a default position. And if there is something that is disturbing your happiness, he talks about, that we should commit to ourselves 3 minutes to do whatever we got to do in 3 minutes, to just let it out and get it out and away. So whether it's screaming in a pillow, running in circles, doing jumping jacks, having whatever thoughts, laying down, whatever it is, do whatever you need to do for 3 minutes to purge this thing that is interrupting your happiness. But commit to yourself that after the 3rd minute is over, that you're going to go back to being happy. And so it's in these things that are for everyone to consider. How do we navigate this and to do it for self-care, to establish, continuing our mental health to our own well-being? And there's the cliche out there that nobody's going to take care of number one like number one. But that being said, I come back to the idea of help is in this awareness. If we can create this disposition that when we struggle, we figure out who are the list of people, or at least a person that we can reach out to when we need some assistance, we need some help getting through what we're going through. And it's very tough. It's very tough for individuals to even think about that they need help. Everybody wants to feel like they can handle their own stuff. And that's not always possible. And so it becomes this gambit of, first of all, there are many people who are good at asking for help. So the idea is we can learn from them, how they get into that disposition, not be bashful. And disability advocacy, a lot of times it's institutionalized, or it's an agency work or advocacy programs, or with caseworkers and so forth. The idea of building a support network, so to me, this to me in the last decade has become a general mantra, that stuff that I learned from particular people going through their particular circumstances, got through it with something that really 100% of us could learn from and use it as general acumen to stay in, in good mental health. And and subsequently good brain health. Because like, let's say my wife, she recently has been noticing a daily recurrence of headache, and she's blaming it on the spine in her neck, kind of at her shoulders and up to her head, and she's figuring that tension is spurring headache. And but in any case, we can consider, like, how is that sponge between our ears, what is the condition of that anatomical part, and that all this stuff of behavior and mental health and whatever, it's all stuff that can have an effect on the condition of the brain. And I've got a cardiac history, so there's the idea of that brain heart correlation, that the two kind of play with each other. And we can attend to that again in self-care. But again, when we struggle on these things, we can ask, what are we doing to reach out for help? And then what are we doing to consider the idea of when somebody asks us for help, what would we do in that case? How would we respond and be helpful? And a lot of times it's just to listen. A lot of times, if somebody can just, share what they have to share, and then, they know that there's somebody there that cares, that's the building block of what needs to come next.
Well, I know that's true because I have a best friend. I won't say her name, but she has a mental illness, and when she's been in her fits, whatever you call the ones that's based on the condition she has, like mine are called depression when I'm in the low, or they're called flight because of my PTSD or depression. But when she's in those low points of her condition, whether she's texting me or she's calling me, we have a deal where we check into each other. And if either of us feel in our low point, especially when we get to a point of suicide, we call or text each other and go back and forth. And like, I know a time that she needed me not too long ago, and she said where her mind was going about this, low point and possibly suicide and all. And I asked her, I said, what's on your mind? I'm listening. And then she put out some stuff that actually sounded to me like it would be more frustration, but she was in a low point as a result of that. And then when she spilled out a bunch of stuff and I'm listening, I said, what else is on your mind? And then then she spills it out, a bunch of other stuff. Okay, and I said, what else is going on? And then finally she said that now she feels a lot better, and thank you so much for listening, because that's what she needed. Which goes to what you're saying about listening, right? Or being there for each other. That's what we do for each other. That's why, honestly, my therapist said I could be a good therapist. And I'm like, oh, I've got plenty of trades already.
That's exactly right. So what I'm thinking at this point, like I mentioned the, anatomy, basically to refer to the brain, brain and heart. The one thing that has been said by another friend of ours at the Happy Neighborhood Project, Maury, he reminds us how I mentioned, mind, heart, and then the soul, or some organizations or some people refer to body, mind, spirit, and to me, with mental health awareness, I think that is a factor, because balance, whether it's work-life balance or, being able to, look at, like, what do you do for fun, to recreate, get away from the, the weight of life, and go and explore. And
you made me think, when you said this recreational, I was thinking about what we were talking about this morning on the Jaws diet, about exercise and it being helpful for our weight goals or other things. Maybe it's just maintaining weight as opposed to weight loss. But there's the diet side that needs to work with exercise regularly, and working our way up. But then I kind of hear you leading in the direction with this recreational, like exercise is on the table again. We need to be active, even if it's only 30 minutes a day or an hour only 3 days a week or something, or even start off as just, whatever period for 1 day a week and work your way up. That then again, exercise is on the plate. We need, in this case, for mental health reasons, to be physically active at least part of the day, because of where physical activity, there's a tie, like you said, between mind and spirit, or maybe mind and heart, even mind and digestive. As I know with like anxiety and my IBS-C acting up. If I get anxious, I get my IBS-C reactions. That's a tie. And I've actually been told that by medical doctors. Even a gastroenterologist and psychiatrist both agreed. But at the same time, there's the exercise being tied in with the mental health. That's where physical activity, if it gets you in fat burning or cardio, which means your pulse is above 100 when you're working out, it causes your brain to produce serotonin and dopamine. They're the natural happy pills. It's an actual chemical reaction. It's not just a thing people say or a thing people do, but there's actually a chemical produced that naturally makes you happy. And that's why physical activity is great for mental health.
Yeah, you're right. And we can just expound upon that to be environment. I know that there's healthcare organization that actually does attribute, monetary resource to make sure that for patients that enter into their facility, that there's a lot of aesthetics and a lot in the environment, for healing and wellness, so like whether it's, water coming down a wall, or whatever it may be, or maybe like just little audio sounds that are just kind of put into the air. Like, they have a speaker system that just really softly is just playing some sounds to just kind of really, have the sensory experience, to consider, like with the food you taste, or, the smells, in the area. Like, there's essential oils, people are doing diffusing and stuff like that. So there's things that can promote relaxation or calmness and things like that. And to have
there's even with that one, the alley you're going down with that, there's even body soaps where you get stuff like the spearmint lavender or something like that from Bath and Body Works, or you go to Walmart and you get a eucalyptus body wash or whatever. There's even like the Dr. Teal's has a calming bath salt that, at least I know it's common with women, to be like to take a bath and put bath salt in. And that one is called Radiant by Dr. Teal's, is a calming and happy producing through some kind of natural chemistry between the brain and citrus. So it has different citrus fruits and it causes you to get happy but relaxed. And so it's good for anxiety and depression together to calm you, but then to also perk up your mood. And there's other things like that that are like Kurt, you may say they're not necessarily natural remedies, but there's still resources that go back to using essential oils and all that, right?
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, all these, well, and then to think of temperature, are you comfortable, from the bottom of your feet up to your head? You can get these things where, maybe you have a challenge keeping your extremities, warm or cool, and stuff like that. So kind of thinking of all these self-care things and to think of comfort that can promote, an ideal experience which favors everything going on with you biologically. And then, that can contribute to, happy thoughts, or if you're working through some things, it can maybe, empower your capacity to, you know, if you're trying to strategize or trying to work through a project, like you being a writer, there's probably some, challenges that happen when you're trying to produce a, writing piece, and, emotions probably go on a little bit of a roller coaster as you're trying to figure
I deal
out.
with that a lot, but I have to say, then go with the idea of all of us trying to, at least we think we're able, trying to return to the workforce if we could. That's where Lawrence and I were talking about seeing a ideal situation, because script writing, that he was all in, and he's the one that this documentary is going to be with. Okay. But that those are different, that writing and other arts are the types of trade that come with low stress. And the lower the stress is the more creative and productive we get. Like artists in general, whether it's painting, it's writing, it's singing, but art is produced in a light or stress-free environment setting. So like he and I were talking about, okay, so again, the script writing for his movie productions, okay, and his TV productions and episodes and all this stuff, but we were both in alignment that if he gave me some kind of requirement that's a minimal production per say year, like 2 per year or whatever, that he was explaining what I confirmed, which is that having a requirement would put stress, and stress would reduce productivity. So actually the agreement, because he says he doesn't require any certain amount of production. And I said, well, that's actually what happened with Twitter, is that all these people are different writers and others doing all this work behind. And then Elon Musk comes in with inducing some kind of stress, whatever was his actions. And then they pulled down because they couldn't fulfill or didn't feel comfortable doing the job. And it's because stress doesn't correlate with, in a positive way, but in a negative way, it does correlate with a reduced productivity of an art. So that's where I see myself going with Lawrence in the script writing and my books and all this other I got going on. That's where I see, even though I have a zero tolerance to stress, there's opportunity. And so I'm trying to make it out there that, see, we're going to do a documentary about this movement to try to get healthcare available for people who are mentally ill and have other medical conditions. Because then there's what you're talking about of needing things to do with our time, activities. Well, how many of us are also good artists but don't actually know way to get into that field? Okay. Like, I know a best friend who is great at writing, but she doesn't know how to be an author. Well, I am one, and that's part reason I have my company where I help people write and publish, right? So we need stuff like that. And then there's other trades that are more along the lines of technical, that some people do better in a very structured system. This is the way it is, and it's always a certain way, black and white. Like, that's accounting. That's one part reason my dad thought I'd be great in accounting, even though I ended up totally running the opposite way. To be an art, right? Not even math is writing. Not even structured, but freestyle. But still, that this all supports that we have some kind of skill we can bring to the table. And if we were able to pull out and create that environment, even if it's self-employment or contract, like I was saying about so many I know that can do those jobs, but we can't do actual employment or full-time work. But if we could do the self-employment or the contract and have health insurance and medical insurance, dental insurance, all these insurances, and like something like Aflac, that's our way of having our income come in if we're out of work because of, medical or something, then a lot of us who are on the system, meaning like on disability and SSI, could return to the workforce. But that's the biggest problem is we can't get health insurance. So we don't, if we come off of it and return to the workforce, then we're without health insurance, which means we end up back on the system because our condition gets out of control. Because we can't get the medication and see the doctors or the surgeries or whatever to keep us functioning. It got us functioning, but we can't stay functioning. See what I mean? So that's where we're going with this. That also involves the balance of being into some kind of work that fits with you so that you can do these activities like the recreational or going to the gym, make your own schedule. So if you're like me where you can't wake up, at 4:30 in the morning to be at an 8 o'clock job that's an hour and a half drive in town, like how life is here in Houston, you could still have a job that somehow is, say, tutoring or something you do in the evening, but you can put in full-time hours, even if that means working, say, from 4 p.m. to 12 a.m., and that the late night are college students, right? Or others that already like to be up late to do their studies. And so there's a system we could develop like that, but that comes with self-employment or contract work. It's still a system that we could say in the morning we're doing our workouts, right?
Yeah, with what you're saying about that goodness of fit for a person in their occupation and the format of the occupation, whether independent contractor or employee of a company and whatever. Basically, Emily and I are participating in what's called Helpopedia, helpopedia.org, and this is a group of professionals helping parents and students with this, right at the very beginnings of it. How are we thinking of this in high school? How are we preparing for this in college, so that we can, right from our mid-20s, get out into the workforce and have that goodness of fit and, all of the considerations and the processes and the tools that can be used and leveraged to help folks, 14, 15 to 25, 26, whatever, that, we can all navigate this better. And I think some of the things with these occupations end up being carryover, spillover from people of the past. So I really
Like
promote.
what's an example?
What about an example?
This spillover of the past. So what's an example of where that happened?
Well, a lot of it is like even like how much people get paid, like the economics of it, like in terms of, doctors and lawyers and, these high paying jobs. Like my wife is at a university and it just makes my head spin, in terms of the way compensation is established in that arena, versus somebody who's in, health services or healthcare, or the idea of, caregivers, being underpaid, manual labor. I just saw a movie last night that Will Smith played the main character in, it's Pursuit of Happiness with a Y, happiness with a Y. And, the character's story there is about being a salesperson selling a piece of, healthcare equipment, and, kind of the challenge in that, and even through the financial arrears, with being on a commission only situation, and then it being a tough product to sell, and then bills aren't getting paid. A divorce is part of this story. So now you have a child, a boy is in the middle of this, and it was just an amazing movie, to watch. And then this Will Smith's character gets attracted to go into the financial industry, being a broker, a stockbroker and stuff like that, and getting into trades, and and gets into a very esteemed position. and it's very much a rags to riches story. So like, where did that all come from? It came from, the century behind us, to say like all these people made these decisions about who we value and how much we're willing to pay them. And when you really look at, why is this person getting paid $100,000 and this other person's over here struggling to get 35,000 a year, and like, where, like, let's look at our basketball players or the pro sports, the ridiculous amounts that we will pay, men to go up and down a field or up and down a court, when there's so many other, great problems that need to be solved. People who deserve to have some of that money were thrown at a basketball game. Why don't, yeah, there's some things that philanthropically are done to say that these ball players are given back, but is it to the degree it ought to be? I personally think no, we're not even close.
Well, I think the biggest problem is stuff like the pharmaceutical industry, because a medication that I pay $15 or $20 a month to get a prescription, they're actually charging, say, $3,600 or $3,800, that my insurance is paying all but that few dollars I pay. And so, like, even not saying what side I'm on, but even different politicians, including what's his name is president now, Biden. Even Biden made a comment in his first quarter speech. You know what I'm talking about? That he said that pharmaceutical companies are being allowed to basically, what do they call it, gouge prices, making it hard for everyday people to afford without having health insurance. And so for that reason, that his stand is that something needs to be done to put a limit on how much pharmaceutical companies can charge, which means like going to the payment thing, right? So they're being paid too much, he thinks, because he calls it gouging instead of just expensive, right? But that goes to, then again, somewhere that money goes to somebody's pocket that, at least he says, is not reasonable considering the cost and how much they raise the price compared to the cost to produce it and do all the researches. Not saying what side of the politics I'm on, but you know what I'm saying, as an example of how that's outrageous prices. That means these somebody are making way more than, at least the stockholders, way more than who are actually doing the research itself for them, right? Or who are the doctors prescribing it, or who are, the who gets so much money versus the who that's really doing it that doesn't get that much, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a television series that addresses this whole healthcare mantra, and characters in there are, it gets to the point of, the value of a person, and really sort out how, some people, aren't worth keeping alive, type of stuff. The value we put on.
Worst topics, but they're so true and so important. I mean, like, even it's not suicide. What do they call it? Where older people get so sick that they basically, it's like abortion, but it's to old people.
Oh, you euthanize them?
Yeah, euthanasia. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're so sick, and some family members just get tired of dealing with them, so let's go ahead and euthanize them.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of what I mean. If we really look at, like where this stuff all comes from, it's the best that could be done from the years, decades, and century past, but we really, every day going forward, we have the opportunity to revolt, to rebel, to be renegades, to be mavericks, to be bold, to advocate, and to really, call for system change and changes in the marketplace, to boycott. And like even with our insurance system, like you said with the pharmaceuticals, I'm just baffled at how there's so many great companies out there that are providing a more alternative approach, health approach, with supplements and, with, different, resources and tools in the health industry. A lot of stuff not supported by insurance, not paid for by insurance. So it's just amazing that synthetic drug, because of all the research behind it and everything, gets, like you said, Joe Biden is telling us that we really have to look at really fighting the pharmaceutical industry the same way we fought Philip Morris with tobacco and the cigarettes. It's like these powers that be know what they're doing to us, and they still do it. I was on Coreg and lisinopril for my heart, and because of what the health products industry taught me, I knew that at some point I needed to be able to ask my doctor to say, okay, this lisinopril, do I really need to be on this? And you know what happened? Right from that appointment, just because I brought it up, there was a weaning process set up, which just took like a month. He just watched what happened when he took me off of it. And then a month later, I came back. He's like, yeah, I'm convinced you can stay off of it. Now, what if I didn't ask? I maybe would still be on it today. So this is the awareness that I think helps, because the economic impact, affects our mental health, because finances are.
Especially where I went with the Affordable Care Act, and that people who can't get insurance because of certain jobs, what I was talking about? The contractor, they're self-employed and they have pre-existing conditions, they can't get health insurance. Well, after they reach 39,000, they can't even get it through the Affordable Care Act. And even if they did, because they were under that, let's say they made 36,000, 2,000 goes to get that coverage that has a $10,000 deductible, that then they only have $1,000 left of their monthly income, assuming they didn't pay taxes, right, to pay rent and all their other necessities, which is why it doesn't work. And it doesn't allow people like myself who want to return to the workforce but are disabled to have a means, because if we try, we're going to end up without insurance and be back in the same situation. Or as my mom says, I'll go in a group home, because I won't be able to have insurance, since I won't be on disability anymore because I don't have my seizures. So it's a difficult situation that doesn't really resolve. And that's what we were trying to do our podcast on, because you see how it applies and impacts. There's the economic state you were talking about, and all these other perspectives that it impacts even people that don't have mental illnesses, or maybe don't even work with or for people with mental illnesses, like a psychiatrist or therapist would, right? Or they're not necessarily a family member of someone with a mental illness, but still, how big of an umbrella is that it impacts?
Yeah,
and we're running out of time now, though.
Yeah, and kind of what happens, whether we're talking about mental health or general health, if somebody has a mental illness, that there's this idea of stigma. And like with HIPAA, the HIPAA laws come from that for everybody, it's a private thing. And, so that's where the industry or just life reality kind of has us, because, it's an issue, because how are we going to solve, improving the system when only the healthcare providers and the patients have this information? Not saying I'm advocating to change that, but I'm just saying on a private level for each person, kind of like when people donate their bodies to research and stuff like this, or when you're an organ donor, stuff like this. Like I just shared that I was on Coreg and lisinopril, and can kind of let people learn, from, my medical journey. I think if people out there are willing to do this, I think that could have a great effect. You know, there, I can't find it again, but there was a research project that I participated in, which basically was steering towards, and I hope it's still out there, but again, I can't find it to go back to, in terms of having like customized health. I forget the term they had, but it was basically building like your health journey, building like how we're going to solve and help your health, Jennifer. It is like it's diving into your case and building from learning about
Like
you and your
customized?
body. Was it?
Customized?
Yeah, it is customized, but there's another term they were using, you know, to kind of give this, you know, this tailored approach, you know, and this philosophy, you know, to get us away from this cookie cutter approach that, you know, yeah, it's good to have protocols. It's good to have indications, contraindications, stuff like this. But this was a whole research and databasing of like collecting DNA, like looking at the DNA aspect and everything in the medical history, and look at how you build your strategies and your care plan, you know, whether it's medical pharmaceutical consideration, whatever it is, to build it all from within the person's profile, and you know, and make it very customized, like you say. You know, and to me that's very important, because, you know, if we don't on a larger scale build a future where this is possible, that in the end, what I hope happens is, all like a lot of these home businesses, like I mentioned, essential oils, or the vitamin supplements, or, you know, all these great things that are out there from the last 20 years of the health industry. People are producing a lot of great stuff, and it's not supported by insurance. And, you know, somehow we have to kick that process in the tail, because to me, we should be looking at naturopathic, alternative, you know, ways that are more conducive to life. Whereas the synthetic drug, great, but we should be scaling, like the opioid crisis and stuff like this. We should be scaling that way back, and really better define the smaller role that pharmaceuticals have, because there is definitely something pharmaceuticals can do, like me having Corrigan lisinopril. I would have been hard pressed to replicate that through what I'm talking about. But to have a plan of obsolescence, and then to have a plan where the other, so it's allopathic versus naturopath, and to help people and help the system, like insurance system, be able to fund, to have some ways that insurance dollars can be applied, because it's the better path where possible. But yet we always make it like insurance can't do anything with it, so everybody's kind of on a private funding side, and it doesn't make sense, because a lot of these products would do better for so many patients than the synthetic drugs, the pharmaceuticals.
Well, let's leave it at that and go on with our announcements, because we're running out of time. If we keep going, we won't be able to put this on Fanbase and they won't hear us. Do you have any announcements, Kurt?
I'll just mention that we do have a Solidarity Summit, you know, set up for Saturday, Sunday, March 18th, 19th, starting Saturday morning, USA side, to bring in some participation from India and some presenters from India. And then it's also happening again on Sunday, the 19th. And so folks can find that at mutualaidnetwork.org. Everybody's welcome, free to participate in the Zoom session that weekend.
Any others for you, or Project Die Hard or anything?
We'll just mention Project Die Hard, projectdiehard.org, and maybe dive into learning more about it through the great podcast that Emily helps produce with that as well. It'll be on later today with its Monday mission. And so that's at 6:30 Central. every Monday, 6:30 to 7:30 Central, and a great way to learn more about the organization and other contacts and organizations and companies as well.
All right, then. So then, for those of you who are listening or watching, if you'd be interested in being a social media candidate or a virtual assistant or a public relations person on behalf of Giles Coffee Chat podcast, please go to calendly.com/Jen's Books and More to get on our schedule and be considered. And that will be in exchange for a percentage of profits as your compensation. So that's social media candidate, virtual assistant, and public relations person. And Calendly is CALENDLY.com/JENNS Books and More. And thank you everybody for tuning in with us. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. And for those of you who may be new, this is Jaws Coffee Chat, JAWS Coffee Chat. And you can learn more about us or find other episodes as well as books and other things we do or offer at Jen's Books and More. That's www.JENNSbooksandmore.com. And that's our website and our show, and that's what we have. Thank you, everybody, and have a productive week.